bus was actually running up cat late, so I wasn't sure if I'd be able to get in here in time, but I did.
Where do you live now?
I live on East 6th Street still.
Okay. So what is this, a tablet? Or what
Yeah, this is a Samsung Galaxy Tab.
Mm-hmm. And you like it pretty well?
Yeah, I mean, my desktop computer was acting on the fritz, so when I was living in the park, I wanted something with a little bit more functionality than I could do on my phone.
Uh-huh, sure.
And so I thought, well, I can't afford a laptop.
But you can't telephone with it though, can you?
No,
Yeah.
unless I use like a voice app, there's one called Viber.
Oh, okay.
Or
You can't use VoIP?
Um,
Voice over internet?
I can do Skype.
Uh-huh.
So,
and you can hear it?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
So I can do Viber
Is
and
that all
Skype.
part of the package, or is that extra money you have to pay for?
Well, for Skype, I would have to pay for any time that is not to another Skype user.
Oh.
But Viber is totally free. If I
So you can do anywhere in the world?
Well, yeah, as long as the other person has Viber. So I can talk to another Viber user.
How do you get to know the Viber user?
I actually heard about Viber from a Canadian that I have gotten to be online friends with, and then we start talking on the phone. And so she is an occupier in London, Ontario.
Oh, cool.
And she's also owned by a cat.
Owned by a cat, yeah.
Yeah.
You too?
Oh yeah, I'm owned by a cat.
Owned by this doggy and 5 cats now, 4 indoors and 1 is kind of creeping toward the indoor. And a bird.
I used to have birds too, but then after my last bird died while I was away, she split off her perch. Apparently,
What kind was she?
a lovebird.
Oh.
In fact, I rescued her out of a bad situation.
Uh-huh.
Oh, you want to get on camera?
Herself?
Yeah. But there was a canary with her too, but I couldn't get the canary. But the lovebird was the one. She was in a smaller cage than the canary.
Uh-huh. Oh.
And her condition of that case was so much worse, and I wanted to get that lovebird out of her. And then the canary died, but I was able to get the lovebird out of her.
Was that somebody you knew, or?
There's some, I don't. Even though I haven't done that kind of work since August of '09, I still like to protect confidentiality of those I work with.
I don't want to know who it was. I just didn't know if it was like a shelter.
No, actually, got out of a home, and I put her in a bigger cage. And I changed her diet to include seeds as well as the pellets, so she would have a variety, and what I think better nutrition. And I treat different things in the cage for her to chew on and to play with. But while I was out, I was gonna change her water when I got home from work, and then all of a sudden I saw her on the floor of the cage, but she liked to hang sideways on the cage perch. And I don't know if she slipped off that or off the perch. But that was something. She was already 10 years old when I got her. And then I had her for probably another 5-6 years.
I don't know how long lovebirds
They can probably live, about 30,
really?
probably 30, 40 years, I think.
I have a parrot that will outlive me for sure.
Yeah.
He's 10. African gray.
Oh, the grays and the large parrots could live up to 70, 80 years.
Well, 60, 70 they told me so.
Yeah. And the grays, I think the Timas are about as intelligent as the African grays.
The Congos, you mean?
The Timas, the Tima gray.
Timas,
Yeah.
They're both African grays.
Yeah, one is a red tail.
Yeah, one has red, one's burgundy.
Yeah. But they are highly intelligent birds.
Oh, tell me about it. Have you heard about the work of Irene Pepper?
I know of the one who, that bird,
Alex,
was
he was very famous.
Yeah, and he could distinguish colors. He could distinguish.
And do math.
Yeah, and he could distinguish material types. He could tell you what kind of thing it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also streamed the drone protest earlier in the day out at the airport.
Were you at that? You were
Yeah.
at that, weren't you?
Yeah.
The day Robert Nyman talked.
Yeah.
He talked at night. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I was at the drone protest earlier.
I noticed that on NPR they're dealing with it a lot more than they were.
Yeah. Well, the show like On Point. If you listen to that show, that yeah, the guy who does that normally,
Thank you
he really gets
for
into it.
coming tonight. I think this is going to be a nice, unique program. I know a lot of you have been involved in different pieces of education and work on Palestine. Tonight, I think we're going to have a little different look with two people who have just returned after being part of the Michigan Peace Team, solidarity activists. We're very anxious to hear what they have to share with us. I'm also going to introduce, many of you now know, Iyad Rand. At the end of the program, he's going to talk about our campaign around the social boycott. And we think it's time from education to action. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But first, I want to introduce Julie Storm Sage Brown and Jessica Resnick. That is your name. Resnick.
Very Czech.
Nice. Okay. So we're really looking forward to your sharing, and we'll just take it over.
Thank you. Okay, I'm Jessica. So we kind of have a tricky situation where Julie's going to be flipping the slides for me, and I'm going to be up here kind of talking. But I just want to first open with, we are Des Moines Catholic Workers. I know this is a crowd. This is the first time we spoke in Des Moines, so this is a crowd kind of understands what Des Moines Catholic Workers does and what Julie and I do. But I like to open with just like a brief overview of who we are and what we do and kind of where we come from. So we, with 14 other folks, run a hospitality house here in Des Moines, where we provide meals and showers and hygiene products and food for impoverished people and predominantly homeless people. And with the Catholic Order movement, there's a rich history of resistance work as well. And so about a year and a half ago, a couple of members of our community started what we call the Rachel Corrie Project. And our intention and our hope with that project is to have people sponsored by this project out of Des Moines Catholic Worker in conflict zones 365 days a year. So with that project, Julie and I were the first to go to a conflict zone to occupy Palestine. And we're the first to come back and share our stories. So that just kind of gives you an idea of what we're doing. So before our eyewitness presentation, again, I like to start with a little historical context, kind of let people know what's going on in this region. So I don't know how many people are familiar with the Zionist movement. It began in the late 1800s, and as we know, Jewish people throughout history have just been oppressed and suffered great violence. And in the late 1800s, a small group of Jewish people got together and said, we're going to resolve this problem, and we are going to resettle ourselves and reclaim land in what we consider our holy place. That's what is today Palestine. So you can see the white is how many Jewish people, predominantly Zionist people, were settled in Palestine by 1946. Now, up in the early 1900s, the British had military control of this land. In 1947, we see the UN comes in, British kind of handed over the UN. The UN comes in and says, well, we're going to divide this into two states. And so you see by 1947, what we have are in the green is the Palestinian land, and the white is Israeli land. Now, by 1967, you can see it because this, but you can see now the gray area that the UN had given to Palestine has now been taken and reclaimed by the Jewish people. And what we have today are just strangleholds. Israel has set up checkpoints and Jewish settlements all over this area, and you just have little pockets of Palestinian land. I'd like to show this map. Right here you can see these areas are Israeli checkpoints. Now this is the area that is given to Israel, and this is by the UN. And this is the land that the Palestinians are supposedly given. Now the orange is all occupied Israeli territory. So this is closed military zone, and these are all checkpoints, mostly they're mostly positioned around Palestinian settlements. So it's really difficult for Palestinians to maneuver in and out of any settlement there or any village that they're in. So they can't. It's hard for them to navigate up to just a neighboring village, Palestinian village. So it's hard for them to go to work, to school. It's very unpredictable how long the Israeli military will close a checkpoint. Sometimes a couple hours, sometimes days. And then what you have here in the blue is what we call the apartheid wall. So Palestinians can rarely navigate in and out of not all enclosed military zones, rarely through, or sometimes through checkpoints, but never through this, unless maybe extreme circumstances like medical or work permits or something like that could a Palestinian travel in and out through Jerusalem or through the wall. So this is an image that Julie and I saw as soon as we left Jerusalem through the wall and entered into Ramallah, which is occupied territory. You can see the wall here and the watchtower, the military watchtower. So you're going to start seeing the beginning of the images that we first saw when we got into really dark. But you can see that's an Israeli checkpoint. Actually, the checkpoint right outside of the village we lived in, which is Hawara. It's in the northern segment of the West Bank. And oftentimes we got called because there was a lot of violence at these checkpoints. So you can see that the military will line up outside checkpoints, oftentimes prohibiting the children from just getting home from school or people getting home back and forth from work. So we were called there a lot because there were tear gas canisters fired and oftentimes just lines of military, like not allowing people to get home to dinner for their family and stuff like that. So we would go and document and stand with Palestinian people do this. And we always put a couple of pictures and on this side of the kids, these are our neighborhood kids. So every day we'd go out into the field and we'd stand with Palestinians through ammunition, live fire, tear gas, tear gas station, and we filmed to these Israelis finally, and they were wonderful. They were just a wonderful part of our experience there. So, and this is them playing the drums. Now, Julie and I went with the Michigan Peace Team, and this gentleman here on the far left is John Davies, who's the third member of our team. Okay, yeah, I'm getting confused. So every Friday, Fridays are holy day. Every Friday, different villages around the West Bank, the Palestinians will gather together and demonstrate. Each village has a different cause that it's demonstrating against. In Kuf Kadum was the first demonstration that we went to when we entered Palestine. Basically, what the fight was in that village was they were 2 or 3 years ago. Israeli Jewish settlement was built probably 2 or 3 miles from their village, and since then a road had been closed that Palestinians no longer access to. It's called an Israeli only road. And so every week on the holy day, every Friday, the Palestinian men gather together at the mosque, pray, and they march up to where that road had closed. And oftentimes, well, every week, they would see a line of soldiers, and oftentimes they would suffer tear gas inhalation, but they would just go up and say, hey, we want this road open. One really important reason that they want this road open is because not only has this been their road, as long as they've known it, they've had access to this road, but also because Nablus is a nearby village. That's oftentimes where people work. The village they lived in was very small. Now this was like a city. So people commuted often to Nablus for a variety of reasons. And since that road had been closed, it takes 3 times as long as to go around. And so it was just like, just for pure functional reasons, like we need this road open. So we went with a group called the International Solidarity Movement. It was Julie and I and maybe 4 other international actors showed up here this day. The first thing we learned about Palestinian people were they were very, very hospitable. So the first thing we experienced were children offering us sweets, men brought chairs out for businesses and office, tea and coffee, and we just kind of started asking questions like, where is this demonstration going to be held? What is it we should be expecting? And trying to get some background and details about the demonstration site. As we walked up, the men were like, here, we'll show you where the road's closed, we'll show you the Israeli military. We saw children along the road playing with tear gas canisters. That's what this child has in his hand. And it was a really powerful image outlandish for us, just maybe 3 days in being there, and they're looking along the roads, and there are tear gas canisters and rubber bullets, and just like the roads are just littered with these things. Like this is just an everyday occurrence, and these children are just picking them up and playing with them, and so we found that really disturbing as we were walking up to what they called the demonstration site. And as we did, you see there's the roadblock here that some Palestinians have built, and you see there's a military vehicle over here. Now this is the Jewish settlement in the background. You can see that. Now so this is where the road is closed, and that's where the new settlement is. And as we walked up, the Israeli military had already begun firing tear gas canisters. So we had run up and down the hill probably 3 or 4 times before the march even began. And but this is after the men had finished praying. This is what it looked like as the men marched up to the road closure, just waving their flags and asking, really to be able to gain access to that road once again. But you couldn't even approach those women. Even if you came within 50 feet of the military, they'd be firing stuff at you. I mean, there's no dialogue, or there was no opportunity for dialogue in this circumstance. And so probably 6 or 7 times after tear gas canisters had been fired, as we ran and kept coming back up, and the military clearly became frustrated and began to fan out around the village and come into the village from other areas. So we've been briefed beforehand that if the military enters the village, it's not good. People will be arrested. Palestinians will be arrested, and that's like 6 months minimum in Israeli prison if you're a Palestinian arrested. People will be shot at. We don't want that to happen. So we saw the children going to other edges of the village, just a small village, and building roadblocks to try to prevent the military from entering. And I told you, kind of briefly mentioned earlier, we went with a group called International Solidarity Movement, that's ISM. They're a really great organization on the ground in Palestine. And they invite international activists to come and do the kind of work that Julie and I did, which is third-party nonviolent intervention. Tom Woodhead was an supporter. We worked very closely with him. He's the one who recommended we go to the film the first time. We worked very closely with him the whole time we were there. A week after Julie and I returned home from Palestine, we received an email from ISM, and they told us that Tom had been arrested in Kufdum, the village that we just saw, by the Israeli military, along with 3 other Palestinian men. They were blindfolded. They were lined up against a wall, facing a wall, execution style, and they were beaten. And Tom is now sitting in an Israeli military prison and awaiting deportation and facing domestic terrorist charges upon his return home to the UK. So we always shout out for Tom. Now, Julie's going to talk about your racist behavior. All right. Just give me like
So, a couple days later, we got a call from ISM that said that we were going to do something a little more low-key. We were going to go to a town called Reef, and we were going to go and plant olive trees. There had been a field where a lot of olive trees had been burnt by settlers that lived in a nearby settlement. And so, International Solidarity Movement had purchased a lot of small seedlings, and they were going to go replant these into this field. So this is the mayor of Yarif. As soon as we got there, we were greeted by the mayor and the city council, and the city council members, there's Jessica and John David, and we sat in their office, and they offered us tea and offered us coffee, and this was a picture that I captured that was on the wall in the mayor's office, and this is actually someone's home that had tear gas canisters fired inside of it, and a person caught on fire, and there was all kinds of pictures like this all over the walls of the mayor's office. Pictures of the horrific struggle of the people that live in the town of Jarif. So after we left the mayor's office, we went with some of the other activists and a couple of farmers with all these trees, and we were going to be planting. We loaded them onto this bus and started walking up the side of this hill. On the way up the side of the hill, we went by the school, and all the young children came out and waved and were screaming and held up peace signs, so I figured I'd put a couple pictures in there. They were absolutely wonderful. And then this was in the middle of the road. This is one of the first of many roadblocks that we saw while we were in the West Bank. And I thought it was really odd at first that I would see these in the middle of the roads, and then I found out that the Palestinians were the ones that put these there, because it didn't make any sense to put a block in your own road. And it's after I'd been there for a while and realized that a lot of these roads don't go through to anywhere that they have access to anymore, but it's a good way for the military and the settlers to come in and harass them in their villages, so they build roadblocks on their own roadways to keep people out of their homes. So this is the planting area that we were going to be planting these trees, and we carried them along this ridge here, just up over this hill. And as soon as we got there, it's kind of dark. It's kind of light in here, but you can see these little specks. These are soldiers up in the mountainside. So this area that we're going to is Area B, which means it's Palestinian owned and Palestinian controlled. The problem is that it's sitting right next. There's a settlement up over the top of this hill. And so regardless of who the UN or anybody else says has control of this land, Israel's the one with the military. So they come in and they're pretty much a personal protector of all the people that live in the settlement. They do whatever the people in the settlement really would like them to do. So this area here, they don't want the Palestinians in this area because maybe they're afraid that they're too close to their home. And so whenever the Palestinians get into this area, the soldiers come down and harass the farmers. So we show up, and here comes some soldiers down. Even the soldiers coming, the first thing that I witnessed, which I was kind of surprised, was that the farmers just started doing what they were there to do. They started digging in the ground, started preparing to plant these olive trees. Now, when we encountered soldiers previously, if you could do them, as soon as the soldiers started coming, everybody turned around and ran away. So this was a little nerve-wracking because they're coming closer and closer. Go ahead, Jess. And they're coming closer and closer, and nobody's leaving. We're all just kind of standing there. And this was the beginning of a great witness of an act of complete civil disobedience. It was completely nonviolent. It was this action in Europe. So soldiers come up, and the first thing they do is ask for our passports. That's the guy in charge, and he grabbed my passport out of my hand. And then he turned around, all the rest of the internationals started seeing their passports and was getting really angry, yelling at us, "What are you doing here? You can't be here." Go ahead, Jess. They've got Jessica's passport and a couple other people from ISM's passport. Meanwhile, you can see this line of farmers back here and townspeople are still planting the olive trees, regardless of what the military is doing. This guy here, he had a tractor, and he's just doing circles, digging up the land. They keep yelling at him to stop driving it, and he just keeps driving around, filling the land. You can see soldiers are all intermingled with all the townspeople, and they're still focused on their task, which was to plant these trees in the ground. Same thing here, there's a soldier over there yelling at them to stop digging, and they're not even focusing on the soldier at all. They're just intent on their action. So then we notice this guy here, this older gentleman, and what made this particularly striking was, first of all, he was a lot older than the rest of what we were with, and also he was by himself, and he was kind of off by himself, and I noticed all these soldiers started coming up towards him and yelling at him and telling him to stop doing what he's doing. And it starts to get really intense and really kind of violent. And watch this and see this older gentleman. You can see he just has his tools here, and they're all around him, and they're yelling at him, and they're screaming at him, and this guy was yelling at him. And they're pulling his tool out of his hand over here, so he gets down on his hands and knees, and he's digging with his bare hands the earth, trying to plant these olive trees while they're just harassing him the whole time. There's a guy with the gun standing right over him, telling him to stop doing what he's doing. This guy here is taking dirt back into the hole as he's digging it with his bare hands. This gentleman pulls the tool out of his hand here, and he goes back up and grabs it back. And then he gets down on his knees, and he's just working in this dirt. And right here, he's completely surrounded by soldiers. Jessica, John David, and I decided we were going to do something that a tactic we learned, which is called interpositioning, which means you physically put your body in between the oppressed and the oppressors. And in this situation, it was clear to see who was being oppressed. That was this gentleman here. So Jessica, John David, and I walked into this circle of soldiers, and we put our body in the middle and held them back so that he could continue. They're pulling on him, yelling at him, pulling the tool out of his hand. So then Jessica goes down, she puts her arm around him to shield them from what they're doing, and physically starts helping dig in the dirt with their hands, and they're planting this tree. You can see how close we are. There's somebody's gun in my face there. Um, and this was the end. This was, so here they're on the ground. We're all on the ground actually, but and we get this tree planted. Now when that happens, the soldiers get really frustrated because they've been, I mean, it seems like it's taken a long time. It's really just been a matter of a few minutes, but they started out kind of piling on top of him. We push him back down the ground, helping him dig this hole for this tree, and they're telling us to stop. We're not stopping, and shilling them back, vending more rats for this farmer. And finally, they're just really frustrated. As soon as this tree is planted, they grab Jessica, John David, and I. They pull us off and go and grab this guy and attempt to arrest him. And then we did something, a tactic that's called de-arrest, which means that we just physically took our bodies and clung onto this farmer and made it absolutely impossible for them to remove him from that field. This was the last picture that I captured before Jessica, John David, and I were arrested ourselves by the Israeli military. So the reason that we chose to do the de-arrest was because in a situation like that that's one of the situations where we can actually use our American privilege and power. And what that means is if that Palestinian farmer had been arrested, he would have spent time in an Israeli prison under horrible conditions for months and years. Whereas us as Americans were arrested. They took us to a local police station. The police station called the embassies, and within hours we were released. So the Palestinian farmer got to go home. We got to go home at the end of the day. We called that day a win. This is us being released from the settlement of Ariel and walking out. They've got barbed wire and everything around the settlement. Go ahead. Jessica being very happy to be out on Palestinian land once again. Very happy. So this village in the background is, I can't remember the name of it, but that's where we walked to. We just walked over the side of the roadway here, and as soon as we stepped out into the land, the local sheep herder was like, "Salam, welcome, welcome." We walked by a house, and a woman invited us in for tea. We're like, "No, we just got arrested. We need to find a taxi to try to get home." And then the taxi driver pulled up, and he's like, "Oh, welcome. You want to come to my house for some tea?" And we're like, "Oh, we just got arrested. We're really trying to get home." And he said, "No problem, no problem." So we get inside the service or the taxi, and he pulls up to his front door and opens it up, and we get out, and he's obviously going to have some tea regardless. So that's all of us sitting out on his patio, just getting done being arrested, and enjoying tea with his family, which was very lovely. A lot of the villagers came, the children, and some of the older people in town came. So then the very next day, we'd had planned for a while that we were going to go to a place called Hanalaban. There's a farmer that lives in Hanalaban who's asked for 24-hour protective accompaniment for his family. He lives in this farm with himself, his wife, and his two children. And there's two settlements built either side where his house lies. And the settlers come down and they shoot at his house at nighttime with his children, and his family is completely terrorized by them. So 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, there's internationals inside his home protecting his family. So this was our day in Hanalaban. This was the house that was on the land that was destroyed during the first Intifada. There's roadblocks in his driveway that he put up to keep the settlers from driving into his property. And this is the house that he lives in Hanalaban. The settlement's actually on the top of that hill up there. That's the room we sit in. It's a very old house. So everything was in bloom while we were there in February, and so I thought I would take some pictures. It was absolutely beautiful. This land, this property was so amazing. That's John David playing with one of the dogs. So we'd just been arrested the day before, and so this was our time to have a little bit of downtime and enjoy the countryside of Palestine. There's Jessica playing with the puppy. This is one of the two boys. This is the youngest. He was playing with this puppy. Now there's two puppies, and the sad story about these was that their mother had just recently been shot by a settler, and so the puppies were a lot smaller than what they should be. Just part of how the people in this area were terrorizing this family. This is one of the two boys. His name is GMG. I'm not sure what his real name is. He knows a little bit of English, and he's learned all of it through gangster rap songs. So he's named himself GMG. for a reason, to capture these stories and bring them back to America, so I should ask him what it's like living in this situation. And so we were talking about the settlers coming down, and I have a child myself, and I just couldn't imagine what it's like to be that age and have somebody pointing a gun at you, and them shoot at your house when you're inside it. And so I asked him, I said, aren't you just absolutely terrified when they shoot at your house? And he looked at me very seriously, and he said, if they want to kill me, they will kill me. I am not afraid. So it was just amazing to hear that from a boy at that age. Go ahead. Then he showed me there's bullet holes in the side of the wall. This is right next to his door. This is his door. You can't really see it very well. But it was this big steel door, and it has those little wispy marks because his father had repaired all the pock marks and kind of tried to paint over it so you couldn't tell. And he was extremely proud of this door. He went up and he says, very strong door. No bullets. Bullets won't go through it. So he was extremely proud that the bullets wouldn't go through his front door. This was the father. He came home a little bit later that afternoon. That's a settler stopping up there. That's why I took that picture. That's where the road goes, right kind of above his house there. And it winds along this hillside. But this is the father. Now, when he showed up and he found out that we were American, he had a lot of things to say. He would, I don't even know, he'd say all kinds of things like, why does America support Israel when Israel takes my home? And because he doesn't care about politics. All he cares about is I'm trying to live and they're preventing this. His family's been on this land for over 625 years, and in the last 4 years, Israel said this land now belongs to them. And so he has no protection from the settlements, settlers that are coming down, absolutely terrorizing his home. He would say things like, why is there no love in the whole atlas for Arabs? Israelis don't steal money from the bank, they come and they steal your house. He talked about the small boys in Palestine, if they were to throw a rock in a car, that settlers would just shoot them. He says, you don't, no shooting babies, they just shoot. They just shoot babies for throwing stones. I don't know. He was extremely powerful to talk to. He said, nobody on the whole atlas speaks for Palestine. He said, the whole world, no speak. And then he looked at me in the eyes and he says, but you will speak. So I said, yes, I will. So that was the young boy making his tea. Everybody there was so nice. I mean, it's just hard to explain. This is their cow. Jessica was excited to get to pet the cow. They get a lot of their food from some trees in the background and a few crops. And this cow here. It's the cow trying to go inside the front door. So then, after spending the day with them, in the evening they milked the cow and they made us this awesome, warm, sugary milk on an open fire. I don't really know what they did, but it was like the best thing I ever had in my life. And then what was left, they hung in this sack on the wall. And the next morning, this sack, it had turned into some sort of a yogurt. And they're putting it inside this bucket. And I thought that was kind of cool. So that's John David laughing because all we'd eaten for the last 24 hours was the citrus fruit from their trees and a whole bunch of dairy. And so the next morning, John David had been given a spoon of this to try and laugh at whether it was more dairy. He couldn't choke down what he had. So these trees are what he's been planting on his land to replace ones that had been burned down by the settlers. And this is John David. John David, Jessica, and I, along with the farmer and his wife, cleared a lot of rocks from his field. They were going to replant those trees and also a lot of crops. A lot of his crops have been dug up by the settlers as they come down. I mean, this family is absolutely terrorized any way that you can possibly imagine. They had water reservoir for the water. They came down and swimming in it, setting the trees on fire, digging up their crops, shooting their dogs, shooting at their house. I mean, there's absolutely terrorized. So after that day that we spent in Honolulu, it was Friday again, and we went to Offa Prison. There was a hunger solidarity protest. This is a picture. At the time, Samar Asawi had been on a hunger strike. He'd been on a hunger strike for over 200 days in protest of administrative detention, which allows Palestinians to remain in jail in Israeli prisons without trial for an indefinite amount of time, kind of like what we do with Guantanamo Bay. they're doing over there for the Palestinians in prison. So there's a whole lot of people that are on hunger strike over in Palestine right now in opposition to that. This picture I thought it important to put up here. So when I went to Palestine, the first thing that I heard, especially at these demonstrations, was the Shabab's up front. And I'm like, Shabab, what is that, a gang? I never. Shabab just simply means youth or the young guys. But the word Shabab, when I first heard it, was like, it's kind of scary to Western ears. It's kind of a deep sound, maybe something to be afraid of, or something if you were military to shoot at or to kill these people. These young boys are the bravest people I've ever seen in my life. To me, it's a group that I want to protect, and I absolutely am in love with the young boys of Palestine. What I witnessed was a group of teenagers standing up against the fourth largest army in the world, completely unarmed except for maybe stones in the road, fighting for their people, fighting for the land, fighting for their right to live, and that was extremely powerful to me. So at Offer Prison, they, instead of going to the mosque and praying like they normally do for the demonstrations, they had a mass prayer right out in front of the prison. And so these are people getting prayer rugs ready. There's a little boy there. Soldiers were starting to show up. This is the entrance of Opera. These are three boys that had their solidarity posters that I thought were interesting. So this was the prayer. There's over 3,000 people at this demonstration that we were at, and it's absolutely impossible for me to describe what this felt like witnessing this. All these people in humble prayer right before this demonstration. I feel very privileged to have been able to witness this. So then after the protest starts, everybody jumps up, peace signs, and they're all walking around. Then the military starts coming up to the front. And then right after that, it's like, this is all happening. This is like click, click, click. I'm taking these pictures all within like 15 seconds of prayer, and people jump up. The military walks up, and then just all hell breaks loose. They're firing tear gas. There's rocks being thrown. I mean, it's extremely chaotic. So we get hit with tear gas, and it's like breathing in bleach or fade or just something. You can't even describe what it's like to breathe in tear gas. You can't see, you can't breathe. Your eyes are watering, you're crying, you're gasping, and you're trying to run. So this area here was where everybody was praying just moments before. Everybody who couldn't run out of this area had to be carried away. These are just pictures of the wounded. This is the first round of wounded being carried out at this presentation, or at this demonstration. You can see the military starts pouring out of the entrance and starts coming up the side of the hill here.
You say wounded using rubber bullets, or?
At that point there, those were people that were suffering from gas inhalation, completely collapsed on the ground, have to be picked up and carried out. So then, wave after wave of tear gas starts being fired. So imagine you got 3,000 people, you're on a parking lot, there's a road that leads out of it, and they just start firing tear gas at you. Now to make a tear gas cloud that big, it takes a lot of canisters. They got these big rocket launch things on top of their jeeps, like, and it starts hailing down these canisters, just can level like a whole area with all this tear gas. So they're shooting it at everybody, indiscriminately, doesn't matter, everybody's getting tear gas, people are running away. So then this is a picture. I like to add this picture because you see this boy with his face covered. This is a stereotypical Western picture of what a terrorist looks like. They've got their face covered. You can't see who they are. And a lot of Palestinians at these protests had their faces covered. And I kind of like to talk about this because there's a reason that they have their face covered. It's not to be evil or mysterious. I mean, you saw how much tear gas was fired. You have to have your face covered. There's no way that you can possibly breathe without your face covered. Jessica covered her face. I covered my face. There's also a second reason, and that is the Israeli military goes into villages and does nighttime raids, abducts young boys from their homes, and arrests them. One of the ways that they terrorize and oppress the Palestinians. And so if a young boy like this had been at a demonstration, and there are always people in the military constantly taking pictures. So all they need to do is get a picture of his face, go into his village at night, take him from his home, and say, here's a picture of you at this protest, and some other guy can say, and I saw you throw a rock, and then he's automatically in prison. So they cover their face for two different reasons. So we'd been there for quite a long time. This demonstration actually lasted about 2.5 hours. We'd been there for a while, and at this point in time, they're starting to build some roadblocks so the jeeps with the tear gas canisters can't get any closer, and some of the Shababs start to throw the tear gas canisters back to the military or into the water next to us so they don't make those huge billowing clouds. And then so what you can't pick up on these pictures is at this point in time, they start firing plastic, rubber bullets, and real live ammunition into the crowd. But how you can tell that they're doing that is because the Shabab here, you see, go ahead, they start running. The Shabab will generally stand in front through tear gas, through some rubber bullets. When you can hear, there's a distinct sound of when the live ammunition starts happening, and that's when everybody runs. Jessica and I just took cues from the people that we were with, and when they started running, we also ran. At this demonstration, I saw a boy that was shot in the face. Another boy had been carried out of a tear gas cloud. He was maybe 10 years old, and his friends that were teenagers laid him down on the ground and made me on. I'm like, what can I do? And I run over, and he was gasping, and then he just simply collapsed, and they had to haul him off and put him in an ambulance. I mean, 156 Palestinians were hospitalized at this protest alone. This young boy, he climbed up along the top of the scaffolding, and in protest waving the Palestinian flag, right over the top of where all the action, and right over the top of all the bullets and all the tear gas. And I thought that's something worth capturing. It's a young boy running out of a tear gas cloud. That's what it looks like when the Israeli forces fire steel rounds. These are what they call plastic bullets. They are not plastic. They're like steel ball bearings covered in a thin plastic coat. They don't bounce. The rubber bullet don't either. It's all extremely dangerous. And they use these indiscriminately just at people. They call it riot control or whatever. But it's really military tactics being used against civilians. Just more pictures of the devastation in Afra. My friend Scott from ISM taking a picture. There's a Palestinian, you can see him right in the middle. He's picking up a tear gas canister. These things are hot, like burning hot. They just pick them up and can flip them really quick. Just more people on the ground. I mean, that's all you see. So it's like tear gas being fired, then you run, and then you hear the ambulances. The ambulances take people out, and then it clears out. Then everybody goes back towards where they're trying to demonstrate at, and then more tear gas, maybe bullets are fired. Everybody runs, and it's like wave after wave after wave, and people just injured everywhere. More in medicals, taking people away. So at this point in time, they start firing tear gas on top of the buildings and the apartment buildings, and hoping that it will fall down on the crowd below. The problem is that the women and children don't usually go to these demonstrations, and so inside these houses is where you're going to find the women and the children, and now they're being targets of the tear gas. And you can see the anger on people's faces. I mean, and I'm practicing nonviolence, and even here I felt the anger too. It's just like, why does this have to happen? Why, just the military, it doesn't make any sense. It didn't make any sense. I've been to a lot of demonstrations here in the United States, and they're not doing anything different than what we're doing, and right off the bat, things are being like, tear gas, bullets, everything is being fired. It's something that's completely, there's no way you can comprehend. So then at this point in time, because we went there to be nonviolent and try to find some way to de-escalate a situation, and we're in the middle of a war zone, and we don't feel like there's anything we can do, we all decided to dance. So we're in the middle of the street, and we're dancing with the Palestinians. There's John David, we're all in the middle of the road here. Because there's nothing else for us to do. And more tear gas shot at us. This is a vehicle that was playing the music. We were standing over here, more tear gas is fired, we had to run. More people being injured. And then the tear gas clears and we dance again. And so it's us walking down the middle of the street. And all during this, I mean, you can't breathe. It's absolutely terrible. But more wounded being taken out. off of prison, turned into a war zone. This is just what it looked like. I mean, it was absolutely terrible. Our friend Rasmus from ISM succumbed to tear gas inhalation and had to be treated. So, these are some of the things we picked up that were being, I mean, so we're standing there, and these things are like bouncing all around us, and so we picked it up. This is what I talked about, what they call plastic bullet. You can see the metal inside of it. It's the rubber bullet. They're all very terrible.
So, probably a couple weeks into our stay in the West Bank, we decided to come up with a group of rabbis from human rights. We really wanted to connect. We'd heard a lot about Israeli activists, and we really wanted to connect, particularly John David, really wanted to connect with the rabbis to try to understand their role in this movement and in the oppression of Palestine. So we called them and we said, hey, can we tag along with you guys? We've never been to the West Bank. What are you guys doing today? And they said, we're going to a village called Kusra. This village is right on the edge of the Jordan Valley. The Jordan Valley is completely closed military zone. So a lot of the villages on the edge of the Jordan Valley are suffered greatly from military and settler violence. And so they said, we go to Kusra and we check in with them occasionally to try to see if the trees that we help them plant are still there because they're often burned down, to see what kind of violences they've suffered lately, and to document like human rights violations and stuff like that. So we went them to Kusra, and we met with the mayor of Kusra, and he was telling us, sitting in the mayor's office, he was telling us about all the things that had happened recently, and showing us some pictures, and showing us cars that have been set on fire, showing us trees that have been burned down. And you get the phone call right in the middle of this conversation, and he says, oh my gosh, the Israeli military has entered the village, come with me now. So we jump in the car with the two rabbis from human rights, the mayor of Kusra, and we go to the edge of the village where we find a demolition occurring. You can actually see the mayor in this photograph. Pretty much the first village tour on the scene because the mayor is first to find out, so we're there. And so we immediately approached the bulldozer, and you see, the military comes right out, and the mayor starts asking for a demolition order, starts asking why they're here, starts trying to engage in some sort of dialogue, and the military just continues to push us and the mayor back from the bulldozer site. The military says they're tearing down the power lines. People are asking why. The villagers start entering the site and asking why, and the military won't engage in any dialogue. Just said that they're doing their job. Basically what we hear a lot here. I know a lot of people here go to demonstrations and you hear that a lot, and that's exactly what we heard from the Israeli military as well. Emotions start to escalate as more and more power lines are being, we can see, the power lines are being torn down one by one behind us, and these are these like somebody, outside here now, we don't have any more, no longer do we have, these people are educated people, they have laptops, they have cell phones, this is not a third world nation. I mean, these people rely on electricity the way that we do. And so they're very upset. They have families at home to support. And all we really hear from the Israeli military is just stop talking and move back. Just move back. Go ahead. This gentleman here, you could see that clearly that this was his end and that he was very, very upset. He kept pleading with this whole please stop. It had stopped. Kind of like the questioning had stopped. Like, why are you doing this? He was begging him, please, just stop what you're doing. He becomes very upset. I'm recording next to him. I become extremely upset just listening to this man plead. For it's like he knows the way that I knew even being there, and I don't been there for a couple of days, that either I have two choices. Either I walk past that line of soldiers and get arrested and go to jail, and this guy would go to jail for 6 months minimum, or you stay there. Now, for me, I just go home eventually. This guy has to go back to his family and figure out how to provide for them and figure out how to go on and rebuild, just to know that they're going to come and tear them down again. You know what I mean? It was a horrendous situation to be in. I was falling here. So you just see the altercation here, and things are getting more and more excited as people realize that more and more is at stake. And then the Israeli military gets fed up because people start pouring into the site and they begin shooting tear gas at the crowd. they backed up and began firing tear gas. So then we couldn't get within maybe 200 feet from anybody at any point. And the bulldozer, I don't know how many people are familiar with Rachel Quarry, which is the project that we went with. And then immediately we saw that bulldozer, we were thinking, oh my gosh, this became a reality for us as we read about Rachel Quarry. And you couldn't even get close to the bulldozer at all. You could see the tear gas all throughout the mountainside. Go one more. Tear gas inhalation at every demonstration we went to. This is a spontaneous one, and we thought that maybe it would be less extreme, but it wasn't. Just continue firing. This picture's kind of dark, but you can see that man in the red that was really upset before is now lying on the ground from tear gas inhalation. Here's an Israeli military vehicle. Here's the Palestinian medical relief van. And can you see the armed guards? For about 15 minutes, the Israeli soldiers guarded that vehicle to deny that man any kind of care into the vehicle. We watched it for about 15 minutes. The rabbis we hooked up with later told us that they had tried to back their SUV down to there to get that man off the ground, and the Israeli military fired tear gas canisters at their vehicle. So we were kind of watching all this. Eventually, he does get in a vehicle, and we go outside. He took so many heartstrings of mine that I had to make sure that he was okay, and I spoke with the Palestinian medical relief staff, and they assured us that he'd suffered from inhalation, but that he was going to be okay. So, and then we stayed there for probably about an hour, and we get a phone call from the rabbis, and they told us that the Israeli military were setting up checkpoints around roadblocks, around the village, denying anybody from leaving the area. So they said, they called us and said, get in now, because we have to the Jordan Valley, which Julie's going to talk about just in a moment. But we were taking these pictures. These are all the electricity poles that were ripped out of the ground. I think 136 that day were pulled out of the ground. So, and then Julie's going to talk again about the Jordan Valley.
I can do it back here. Great. Okay, so let's watch that. Okay. Bedouins of the Jordan Valley. I'll watch it with you. So we hopped in the vehicle with the rabbis for human rights, and we went into the Jordan Valley. The Jordan Valley was on the right-hand side of the map of the Palestine, Israel. It was everything that was in orange, and they declared this a closed military zone. One of the issues is this is some of the most fertile land, and it's needed for agriculture. So this is actually what the Jordan Valley looks like. Not like a typical military zone. This is a typical Bedouin camp. These are nomadic people. They're some of the last nomadic people that live like this in the world. A lot of them are farmers and sheep herders, and they live in these tent communities. This picture I absolutely love. What makes this picture unique is that there's a woman in it. Most Palestinian women, it's not of their culture or their religion, to let you take their pictures. So I asked this woman, I was sitting at the front of her tent, and I asked her if I could take a picture inside of her tent. And she said yes, and then she jumped right up and straightened her scarf and stood right in front of the camera and wanted me to take her pictures. So she was absolutely wonderful. She didn't speak any English, but and I don't speak any Arabic. But she was great. She was like hugging us and loving on us. These are some of the children in this Bedouin village. They came up right away, wanted to interact with us. There ended up being about 15 children in these several tents, and they all came up, and we had these small toys that we gave away, and we had just enough. As soon as these toys started coming out of our bag, more and more children started piling in. We got a little worried, thinking we weren't going to have enough, but we had exactly enough for all the children, and one for the old woman. When she put her hand out, she wanted one too. So we just suffered from the effects of tear gas only being an hour before this. So this was a great time for Jessica and I to experience a little downtime. And also, this was really the first time that we had interacted with females and children on this scale in the West Bank, because typically at the demonstrations you only see the men. And we also had a third person in our party who was a man, and it's not typical for them to invite a man into their home without their husband, or basically you don't invite a single guy in to a group of women and children. But it just so happened that John David was off with the rabbi, so Jessica and I went into this tent and we played with babies, and there's another little boy sitting on the floor. He's absolutely precious. And there she was posing for a picture again. She wanted me to take her picture, so I did. So this was another gal that was inside the tent, and the old lady kind of badgered her enough so that she would let me take her picture. So I tried to be extremely careful not to get her face straight on, and she approved of this picture. But I wanted to show what she was doing. I thought it was so neat. So we're inside this tent. It's got a dirt floor. There's an open fire underneath, and of this dome-like structure, that black thing on the bottom there, and this gal got this bread, and she's like kneading it with her hands, and then she throws it up in the air and kind of flaps it around, and it gets like 15 inches big. They throw it on this fire, and the old lady's pouring water on it. The whole thing's all steamy and smells like bread, and it's all warm. I could have stayed in that tent forever. It was so awesome. Um, but we had to leave, and so they were saying goodbye. So the Bedouins, a lot of them, like I said, are nomadic, and they are sheep herders, and other kinds of livestock. A lot of people, I've heard people say, why is everybody fighting over these rocks and these stones? And it's not rocks and stones over there. You can graze herds quite efficiently on the land. A lot of it extremely fertile. And so this is the land that we're talking about is what the Israeli military is trying to say is a closed military zone. They use this for their military training, for their war games. When the U.S. military goes over there and trains with them, they run around here in the Jordan Valley. There's thousands of Bedouins that live here. So you go over these rolling hills, and then you see fields of tanks and big towers. Another problem in the Jordan Valley is they're having an extreme water crisis. What the Jordan River used to flow freely through this area, now it's been diverted by the Israelis to illegal Israeli settlements and to the military outposts, leaving people who live in Jordan Valley with just enough water. On a national scale, it's enough for what's to be considered temporary human survival. It's less than what we gave the Hurricane Katrina survivors. And so there's these big water pipelines that flow through the Jordan Valley that have redirected all the water. They can hear the water flowing through them. They're not allowed to access any of it. There's a farmer. This is on the side of the road. You see these everywhere through the Jordan Valley. It says danger, probably some other things in other languages, probably danger, firing zone, just to let you know that at any point in time, if you get shot, your own fault, because it's their military training ground.
Okay, we got like probably 5 more minutes. This Hebron, the Hebron demonstration was the last demonstration we went to while we were in the West Bank. It's an annual demonstration held in Hebron for the opening of Shahada Street. Hebron's it's unique in the West Bank because it actually has Israeli Jewish settlements inside the village rather than around the perimeter. So
It's a big city, right?
it is a city, yes.
You said village, so how big? 50,000, 100,000?
I don't know.
Yeah. So it's a big urban area.
Yeah, it is not a village.
That's what's
it's a city.
different than
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, there are several cities. I mean,
Right.
yeah, like Nablus, the village, they call them villages there though. That's why I have that language. I don't know. I'm in Hebron now. Yeah, inside this there are actual Israeli settlements. Let's see what. Oh, and so within this city, there are actual checkpoints that Palestinians have to cross through because there are road closures and stuff that Palestinians can't have access to. Roads that Palestinians don't have access to. So every year, Palestinian groups get together. Youth Against Settlements was the group that was organizing this year's annual demonstration to open the street that was now closed to Palestinian access. So this is the banner that the kids made. We went and stayed up most of the night with them, kind of learning about the history of Hebron. We only spent one day in Hebron, so we kind of tried to soak up as much information as we could. This is the sign I made with them the night before. Go ahead. I looked a little weird in that photo because I talked to a lot of international activists and local Palestinians, and they all said this is going to be the most violent demonstration you've been in since you were here. And I'm thinking, I've been shot at, I've been in some violent stuff. So I was taking the whole thing pretty seriously at this point after a month in the West Bank. But after prayer, the men started marching towards Shahada Street. And you can see that this is a gate, a fence here, prohibiting Palestinians from gaining any access to the street. And you can see that some of the young kids are climbing up. Some are trying to cut through the fence. Some are climbing up on the fence to hang signs and to try to get the message across that this should be all Palestinian. This should be Palestinians should be allowed access to all of these areas. And so we went around to another area where there was a barrier, and the Israeli military had lined up. What was really unique and great about this demonstration was, and a lot of previous demonstrations, the Israeli military would fire tear gas at us, and the Shabab, the Palestinian youth, would throw stones at the military. And what a bunch of Palestinian activists did was they got together and they decided to move up and kind of interposition themselves between the military and the kids behind them who were throwing the stones to try to create a completely nonviolent atmosphere as perceived by the press on the part of the Palestinians. Does that make sense? So men and international activists began sitting down so that the kids behind them would stop throwing stones because that would hit them in the head if the kids with stones. That made sense. Okay, go ahead. And more people began to join this. And you can see men are lifting their shirts. There's a lot of international press because this is an annual demonstration. So what the Palestinians are doing, they're showing the world that here's the Israeli military continuing to fire at us when we come here unarmed, completely nonviolent. And that's exactly what the military was doing. We were only about 2 or 3 feet away from them, and they were firing over our heads. So it was pretty intense. But go ahead. And so what we learned immediately upon arriving in the West Bank from ISM, International Solidarity Movement, that the quickest thing that will disperse a crowd is the firing of skunk water. So the Israeli military brings their truck around and begins firing water down the street. You can see the street is wet. And it smells, it's chemicals, is what it is, and it smells like rotting corpses. And we are Palestinian-led as soon as the Palestinians began running. So we ducked behind this corner, so we missed a lot of it, but it was just wafting. I mean, you couldn't hardly breathe. This reporter here was vomiting. I mean, it was so horrendous. We ended up being stuck in between this street of skunk water and another street full of tear gas for quite some time. With around our people who were vomiting could barely breathe, and people were passing out. It was horrible. Oh, so what ends up happening at this demonstration is things became so intense. It became warfare. We were chased through the village by soldiers firing live ammunition at the crowd. A reporter probably 2 feet away from me was shot in the leg and taken away. Riots ensued. The most violent acts I've seen in my life definitely happened in Hebron, and we all really kind of shut down and went into survival mode. We don't have pictures of a lot of that. You're gonna have to take my word for it that that's what happened. But that was the last picture we took that day because Julie's our photographer, and we really just went into like a witness mode rather than a documentation mode. And so I just kind of want to end on Hebron. And one final statement I do want to make was I usually end this to try to pull some things together, and it's one of the most powerful conversations I had with the Palestinian man was actually with the farmer, Laban, and he asked us in a conversation, there's a huge language barrier between us, but he asked us what we do for a living at home, and we said, well, what we do is we provide meals and showers and hospitality for homeless people. And he said, what is homeless? He didn't understand what that. These are really hospitable people. I mean, if people are sleeping in the street in Palestine, they'll have a place to stay. And we said, these people who sleep on the streets. And he said, people sleep on the streets in America? And I said, yeah, a lot of people sleep on the streets in America. And then he said, but it doesn't make any sense. Why would your taxpayer dollars not go to housing your own people instead of to Israel to terrorize us and arrest us this way? So I'm just gonna leave on that.
Oh,
Frank Cordero wants to do a quick shout out for us.
and the organization that put those folks out there was the Rachel Corey Des Moines Catholic Worker organization, and we survived on donations, and and we're Catholic, so we have a donation at everything we do. Good friends, excuse us. So the money we're going to collect is going into a pot so we can send more people to Palestine. But the Rich Water Project at Catholic has a broader thing than just Palestine. We're trying to support folks who want to go and do peace work in war zones, foreign land, and domestic places, people of color and poverty. So, and the Rachel Corrie Project is to do that. So,
You have a hat, Frank?
oh, I got a hat. Bob's got a hat. And I think you guys should answer some questions. Yeah. Oh yeah. Here, I'll do this. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, they did great.
Does
It
anybody
is
have
so
any questions?
cold. It's only 66 in here.
Yeah.
So how long were you there all together?
1 month. So we felt very short. It was February then, so only 28 days.
Were you busy every day?
Every day. Yes. We had to turn stuff down sometimes. It was had to choose between.
We would get done with one thing, we'd be in the service or the taxi on the way home, and they would call us, and there's stuff going around checkpoint, and there's stuff down Hebron, but we're going somewhere else. I mean, it's every day, all over.
It was really frustrating, like, as do-gooders like us to be like, oh my gosh, it's impossible to go everywhere and help everybody. We stayed in a village called Hawar, which is just south of Nablus, and they call that, we were on the edge of what they call the Ring of Fire, where a lot of rural villages were just being terrorized constantly. So we were constantly on call. It was so overwhelming. I couldn't go everywhere and do everything.
There's constantly demolishing houses everywhere. I mean, people in Palestine are so absolutely terrorized by the Israeli military and the settlements.
And you worked while you were there, you interacted with Rabbis for Human Rights, with International Solidarity Movement, and what other groups?
Rabbis for Peace?
We did that.
Yeah.
Well,
Ecumenical accompaniment, protective accompaniment for Palestinians and Israelis. We worked with them a little bit.
And then we were,
PP2
Michigan Peace Team, so we were supposed to be having a focus of being autonomous while working with these other groups. So there was a network for us to go do our own things.
We communicated with a Christian Peacemakers team, but we were in the northern part of the West Bank, and their organization is in Hebron, so there was a lot of distance between us. So we basically just communicated like what we were doing on our own end.
So these various groups interact with each other as in an effort to sort of spread themselves out to be where the work is.
Right.
Yes.
And then some groups can focus on different things. Like there's some things that ISM could do that maybe CPT wasn't interested in doing with their people. Like some groups had different focuses and different risk tolerances and different locations of where they're at.
Right.
How did the Israeli officials that you had to deal with coming and going and when you were arrested, what was their attitude to you as Americans? What was that like?
So like the coming and going was completely different than the arrest.
Yes.
But we could focus on like one of those like.
How were you treated at the airport?
Like airport security was horrible. It was absolute. I felt terrified. I think I was more scared at the airport, and I'm not really a fearful person than I was at the Israeli jail.
Why?
They really just instilled this kind of terror in the people and the lines. Like they will come to the lines and you know just tell you like we have reason to believe that there's a bomb in your bag.
Like they pulled us out of the line and went through. They took everything out of my bag, went through everything with the swab, and then we went up to the customs, and they said that we were a flight risk on our plane, and we had to be pulled off to the side again, and we had our passports. This was leaving.
That was leaving.
Still out.
In Tel Aviv.
Yeah. Yeah. But like when we were arrested, they were extremely polite.
They were.
They made sure to buckle us in, and they gave us cigarettes. Yeah, they're like, oh, you're Americans. Hi, how are you? Sorry to inconvenience you.
And we actually had a conversation transported us was from the Ukraine, and he was there, working, and he actually had a conversation with us, like why are you here? And he said, well, our overall goal is just to minimize violence. That's what we come to do as members of MPT. And then he just like further questioned, well, like he's like, well, what about what Palestinians do to us? I'm like, well, what do they do? Because we gladly minimize violence in any situation, scenario. And he's like, well, would you guard us? And we're like, yes, we would. Like, if this were reversed, absolutely. But at least we had a dialogue with these folks. Like, I felt good about being able to talk, about why we're here and what we're doing. Yeah, or even like during our arrest, so like we were arrested and we were tied and we're led over a hill and we're down this valley. They put their zip ties on. There's all these soldiers sitting around us, and they all have their automatic weapons and they're walking around us. And I'm kind of freaked out because I'm like, I'm getting arrested by the Israeli military. Like, this is a little scary. And this young boy, he was probably like 18, like so young. Jessica says he looks like he's 16 years old. He's got like his finger on the trigger of the gun. He's kind of like looking really freaked out. He's walking around, and I was like, "You gonna shoot us?" And he said, "No." And I'm like, "Good, because you're really freaking me out. You're not put that at us." And then so I says, "The other soldier says, how long are we gonna be detained for?" And he just looked at me and he was like, "I don't know. I'm being detained too." And then I realized, like, nobody wanted to be there. We didn't want to be arrested. The Palestinians just wanted to plant their dang trees. The military, so somebody made this crazy call to go and rough up these farmers because they didn't want to be there either. Even now, looking back at the pictures of the soldiers, none of them look like super mad. I mean, they're just doing like stupid things, like swearing and pushing and but nobody wanted to be there. It was just, I mean, there's people much further up that are making these calls.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you. Why does the word get out? Why but we back to the Israelis, I guess.
Oh, good guess.
There's this great, I keep talking about stuff, there's this great website I found called Breaking the Silence. It's like Israeli soldiers who are now who have served in the Israeli military and now coming out against what they've done and what the Israeli military is doing. And you can go on there and watch video clips of soldiers, or former soldiers telling their story about how what they're sold on is not at all how it is being together, and they feel horrible about what they've done and the calls that they took, that they opened the border, they obeyed, and where those orders are coming from, and a lot of times from the settlements, and like people, and it's strange stuff. So I think that's a really good reason for people to go to and to listen about why these soldiers do the things they do, and
We got to figure out a way to get you guys a bigger audience.
Well, it all stems for everybody else though too. I mean, everybody can go and talk to all. I mean, it's really difficult for us to get a whole bunch of people in one area. But if everybody went and talked to all of your friends about it, just think how far-reaching that would be, and that'd be a lot more effective than trying to get 100 people in one room. So yeah, if you maybe could talk to everybody know about Palestine.
Well, you are getting an online audience
There we go. Thank you, Tina.
because I'm live streaming this.
This might be a good time, and I really appreciate your question, to talk about the Middle East Peace Education Project, which is trying to do just what you're saying, bringing as much as possible to the themselves. And there's a big effort. I mean, I hear from so many people, that's the only way change will come. We had a rabbi here 2 weeks ago, and his message was the same. We got to get more people into the territory. We got to get more people to witness this, and then there'll be change. So, what I want to tell you is, this organization, AFSC Middle East Peace Education Project, has been for a couple of years trying to educate. We're looking at how to explain the word, how to get into every faith community in the state, and we sure welcome. We did pass our sign up. If anybody didn't sign, please stop and sign this for the next events. And then I want to introduce Ian Rayan, who is a student at Grandview University, and he is from Ramallah, Palestine. And he's going to tell you about a campaign we're really just in the very early stages of. We should welcome everybody to be a part of it, but I'll leave it to him to explain it. And talk about our flyer, which is a draft.
Thanks everyone for being here. We got quite a presentation, so I was really powerful to see that after a while. So I would like to share this with you guys, and you guys can share it because we don't have a lot of time to talk about that. What we're starting on right now is Palestine. Palestine is a product that is made in Ma'ali Adumim, which is a settlement in the West Bank. And this product is made on a settlement as and the market itself as an Israeli product to the export advertisement. And second of all, I'll just after I give it to please one more copy of here. So this product, as I said, it's made in aluminum. It's one of the biggest industrial settlements in the West Bank, and it markets itself as a product that turns um, regular water, tap water, from the tap and into sparkling soda that you can change place. And it markets itself as an environmentally friendly product because you don't use electricity, it takes only 30 seconds, and you don't use plastic for the bottles. So this is how it marks itself. Now let's look deeper into this. If it's an environmentally friendly product that cares about the environment, then what about the people? If you are terrorizing people by this product, then what is friendly about your product that you're talking about that you're marketing? So, so one of the some facts that we have found is that this product has been around for a long time. And I didn't know about it until we kind of talked about it through the AFSC. But it has markets all over around the world, and I actually saw a video that talks about it was a biased video released by the company itself about the people rights, especially the Arabs who work there, specifically the Palestinians we're talking about right now. And it would not sound really logical for us to be like, boycott this product, but there are Palestinians working there. Well, the thing is, these Palestinians who are working there, they do not have the right to pray, as Muslims do pray 5 times a day. So they sometimes take the rugs, which we use to pray, as a lot of you may know. They take the rugs and they don't let them pray. While when they advertise for themselves through their videos, they make it seem that they let them pray, they let them do whatever they want, and they are comfortable with practicing their religion and their rights. So that's not true. And it actually has a stock market in Nasdaq. It's a product that's been around for a long time. And what I'm saying this is because it needs a lot of effort in order to make a change for this product because it's a strong one and it's actually smart to realize how strong what you're fighting against. And here, when we say boycott, I just want to clarify something. When we say boycott, we're not starting a war on something. We're not starting a war on Israel. We're not starting a war on a store that's here in the U.S. We're just targeting this specific product and nothing more. This specific product, aside from who sells it and how it's sold, we're just talking about the product. And if you open it in it right here, I have mentioned why we should boycott it, which is that it's made on some that markets itself as environmental friendly, but it's not. Because it cares about their mind, about the environment, but it forgets about people, which is more important, I think, for us. And what are we going to do? And we are asking you guys to educate the people that you know about this, and you have a picture. There's a lot of ways online. We actually created a Facebook page that you can like for the campaign. That would be the least thing and the easiest thing that you guys can do. And right now, me and Kathleen are working. Actually, we are like almost done with a letter that we will send to. We're gonna start with Hy-Vee because it sells it. We're gonna start with 200 stores because we thought that Hy-Vee is a local store and it would be easier to target and we can make more influence when it comes to target. Sorry, Hy-Vee more than any other store. And we're gonna have a meeting hopefully with the manager, with the store managers, and talking about everything and make our points clear. And if they would not let us, if they would not agree with our request, which is taking the product out of the shelf, we're gonna leave it. But yeah, as I said, we're not making we're not making a war against the store, so it will be on public property when we're doing leafleting. And we really appreciate any effort into this, and we will meet on Monday, the third, the third Monday of every month at 6:30 for here for the MAPA meeting that we will brainstorm ideas for how we can tackle this country more and more down the road. Thank you. That's it. Yeah.
I was just asking, you know, other places in town that they sold.
It's sold. You would be surprised by how many stores are selling it.
I've seen in Walgreens.
That's one of them. Target, Walmart, pretty much Sam's Club. Everywhere.
Is this the only company that made it?
Look at the,
Yeah.
oh, oh, sure.
Probably on our leaflet eventually. We'll put together choices.
I'm gonna get close to that. I'm just getting close to that. Oh.
So it's a much bigger, it's a national campaign, it's actually an international campaign. And there is a collaborative group in the U.S. where Canadian shows so strange. I think for a variety of reasons, it's like, so this is and, you know, maybe this gives an opportunity to have some impact. But it's, I mean, I'm excited that it's part of an interface, national effort. And we'll do what we can here in Iowa. We hope to be, we'll be building this campaign. We welcome everybody to be a part of that. And as we strategize about what to do, and then eventually we'll be, you know, we'll ask them to take it off if they don't, we'll be reviewing it and so forth. And ask them to go into the stores and ask them to take it off the shelves. One other point about that is, it's not just a matter of whether we win on this effort, it's a matter of how many more people we can educate by getting outside the door, telling about this product on stolen Palestinian land, being made on stolen Palestinian land, and some issues around workers' rights and so forth, and just another way to start talking. It's also a way that so many of us who have been to so many of these forums now can take action. Some of us take big action and go to Palestine, but there's other actions that take a long way, so we did like all of them to be part of that.
Are you talking about actually going to a Hy-Vee and as a group?
It depends on who comes on board. I mean, our next Middle East peace education meeting is this Monday, and we've put together a beginning flyer, just really for us, not necessarily what we'll hand out. But we're first going to send a letter to the managers and so forth. Ed did some research and found out that there's a lot of independence supposedly with the Hy-Vee structure per store. We'll see. And so, you know, we can pick out one or two stores. Supposedly the manager makes an independent decision, and we'll see. And if not, then we'll start refilling and ask people to ask them to take it on.
I'm surprised to see just how much or how much difference there is. Because I see that I have to go to different Hy-Vee stores for the health market to find, you know, different gluten-free foods. And they don't all stock the same thing. And apparently each store has a nutritionist and or some of the stores have a nutritionist, and they make independent decisions about what kind of products they buy and stock. And to some extent they get feedback from customers. You know, in other words, I tell them, look, why don't you stock this, because it's, you know, it's made in a gluten-free facility, unlike this other product that you're stocking that's made, you know, production lines that have, you know, so I can take those kind of concerns to Hy-Vee and make a small difference. You know, it seems logical to me that, you know, you could.
Just to know. I mean, you know, there are a variety of reasons we put into this. We thought the 42nd University Partner, because it's near the campus, and we've been working with some big students, and we hope we examine it. Then we're looking at the south side, partly because that's too far from Grandview, and I'm not sure why we did that, but
we picked two that first of all Hy-Vee, and second of all we
haven't started yet.
We haven't started yet.
This is what we really announced it, then.
Yeah.
We haven't done anything yet.
No, not yet.
They haven't tipped their flowers upside down.
That's what I said, that we are still working on it. Yeah.
Well, it seems the advantage of this over the larger boycott, which makes all sense in the world. But the advantage is it's similar to the exploitation of the Palestinian land in the West Bank, particularly a Israeli business that's taking advantage of it. That's
Problem
that's
is, and the people know that yet.
oh yeah, or make that stink.
Yeah.
Don't tell us. Really good. But I think it's a good move, especially if you're going to be speaking. You're great because you come from the West Bank. I mean, this is your land being stolen. Tell these folks that.
Yeah, and as I said, it's not a war in Israel. As I said, we are targeting a specific product. So I want to clarify this because we don't want to make you misunderstand.
Well, part of the BDS campaign is to target all those companies that are profiting, or entities, or governments, or whatever, those who are profiting from the occupation. So this is one organization that is profiting from it. And we'll win this one by the next.
Well, where's the national, is there any actual facilities in the United States that are headquartered for this?
I don't think so. Right? We didn't have our center.
Probably just an importing company.
Like how it's coming into the country.
Who's their salesperson? Don't they have offices?
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing, they have a contract with the stores. And I feel like a third party, right, who imports and
Someone
distributes.
working for them for their attorney. There's
Yeah.
an office somewhere they
What I mean is, like, if you deliver to American
Yeah.
Express,
Yeah, if there is one that I'm assuming it will be given in New York City, New Jersey, that person is for assumption, but I do not know exactly. But that's a good question.
And exactly why we need more people.
It's right
Right
on the
Americans
box.
helping this company make profits.
Yeah.
in the post office.
So it's not only our government contributing,
Thank you very much.
it's all of us who are purchasing these products. If people would like to grab some little refreshments, some water, and but thank you. If you need to sign this,
Okay.
do so.
Good job, Julie. Good job, just good. Michael, how are you doing?
How you doing?
Good Lord, that was easy.
Gonna knock you over going after it. Oh, Jack got it. Oh, that's the one I wanted. It's just the one. Oh, this is a thicker one. I know these. I know these cookies.
You're supposed to give up sweets, sir.
A long time ago, I quit doing that.
He gave up sweets, I guess.
Traded for a different kind of sweets. How are you? I'm good. I have questions.
You know, I've heard about their job, but never tried it. Yeah, it's really good. I have no idea, but I heard they're customer benefit. Yeah,
It is good.
Yeah.
But as I was watching this, coming out when it's thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for being here. Are you?
yeah, yeah.
All right. Good. Well, I'm sure I'll see you again then. Hopefully. Thanks.
And when you guys start doing actions, I want to know because, I'll document these, I'll live stream them, or if I can't stream, I'll record and then upload it later. So
Did you sign that paper?
I did probably, when, when I was at that lecture with,
Oh, the rabbi?
yeah, with the rabbi.
Yeah, so you are on the list.
Yeah, I'm on. Yeah,
So you'll definitely know.
yeah, yeah, and then of course had all those laptops with the petition on it, and I took video of people signing that, and then I did it.
I didn't know that was him.
Mary Company. Yeah. Great.
Yeah, I think I heard someone say that on the side of the box you can see some info, so that might be something. When you go into a store, you can pick up a box.
Yeah.
My old sister gave her son one of those for Christmas last year.
I can see that it's an attractive
Yeah,
product. If
yeah,
you don't know the
yeah, and I had looked at it myself for something that maybe this could be a useful item or something, but then that never did happen, so I never got into doing that. But now that I know what goes on behind, that how do I break it to my sister and my younger nephew that this was made at the by exploitation.
right.
People were exploited in the making of this thing that is not so friendly as it made out to be.
We're
So
oblivious to
yeah.
sometimes.
You're
Want to get in these
Bound to be
pictures?
at least one good one.
Ever put a camera in somebody else's hand?
I need to go ahead and have a cigarette.
Yes, one more.
in other words, you can't get away that easy.
You said it for me. I mean, is there anything?
Yeah, all you gotta do is
Just point and shoot.
I mean, just, put a solemn
Where do you focus it?
with the ring on the front.
He's
Okay, that's how I focus it. There's nothing here.
Yeah, and
That's the place.
push that button when you get like you want it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
This is a sign sheet that people have been signing. This is the same that I put on a couple weeks ago at the lecture for Rabbi Rosen. And there's some names here. I'm just going to open the back of this. I gave you a look at one side. Now this is the whole. Oops. This is upside down. I'm going to reverse this. So. This is just the first draft of this. This is a work in progress. I'll get revised later.
Yeah, the photos, especially the ones of the,
All right, well, thank you for coming. Good to see
Yeah.
you. Nobody wanted my plain old water. I should have had some soda stream stuff to grab. Yeah, doubles again.
I'm going to go and close this out, and I thank you for watching, and I'll upload this on the internet later.